Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 2 of our brand trust series, sponsored by Mozilla Ads. This is going to be a fun one.
I can sense it already. With us today is Orville McDonald, the Senior Director of Ads Products at Mozilla. He's here to chat with us about privacy first, user trust, and the future of the open web. Orville, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this as well.
Man, I have to say, the pre-chat was awesome. So great meeting you, and thanks for joining us.
Well said.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as well, and I'm sure the interview will be even better.
It'll be even better. And what I love is that you are actually building the product at Mozilla Ads. So I want to ask you, the first question to you is, why should users and brands trust ads inside of Firefox?
That's a great question. I would say that, many people, when they think of Mozilla, right, advertising is not what comes to mind, right? So it becomes really surprising kind of at that point. But the great thing with Mozilla and our products, Firefox, which we're most popularly known for, is that we reach kind of a very dedicated audience, right? That cares a lot about privacy, cares a lot about an open web, not always accessible on some of the other platforms that people are used to using. So you get this kind of unique audience that's very passionate, right? But then when I tie it even a step further, I think we take a very different approach to advertising, right? So I joked about people not really thinking about Mozilla and advertising kind of going together. But really what's at the heart of that is we care deeply about user choice and user privacy. And, I think sometimes with some of the data flows that happen, that causes people concerns. But we've had the great fortune of having like a few decades go by, being able to observe how the ad industry works. So now we could actually take a fresh approach to it, right? And I would say my overarching product philosophy when it comes to advertising is that we want to be both effective for the advertisers, but we also want to respect user privacy. Most people think of this as an or proposition. We actually think of it as an and proposition. So I think as a result of how we approach advertising, we do it in a way that we think benefits all stakeholders. So I think that's kind of at the heart of why advertisers should really trust Mozilla.
Okay, so you talked about the flow, you talked about privacy, the dedication from your users. What does an actual trusted ad experience look like through Mozilla?
Yeah, so I would say at the start of it, it really boils down to user choice. What you often end up is situations where, and I hear it a lot because I spend a lot of time talking to users, and on one camp, you have, I hate ads. And then on the other camp, you're like, ads are great. If anything, they're too good because I'm spending all this money on these things that I actually need, but didn't even know I needed them until the ads came up, right? So it's like giving people the choice to choose kind of what they want. When you have an ads experience within Firefox, for example, you have the choice to turn off the ads. We do not stop you from doing so. We also want you to know that if you do choose to have the ads, right, we will do things that will protect your privacy so you don't have to worry about some of the nefarious actions that might happen on other platforms. We'll protect the users from that. But at the end of the day, the users really have their own choice as far as kind of how they want their advertising experience to be. And that's what we think is at the heart of a trusted advertising experience.
We know that targeting is really important. Understanding the consumer is really important. We also know that privacy is a very important topic and only becoming more and more important over the years, especially with regulation in place and just general knowledge from consumers and users of any web browser. But how do you provide ads and how do they work if you don't and you are not capturing PII and not using PII?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying this is a journey, right? Because the key thing to note is, some people might come into a problem like this and say like, we're just going to do everything brand new, right? And that doesn't work, right? You two know really well that like, this is a robust industry, like almost 800 billion transacted annually, very entrenched players, very entrenched systems. So our approach really has to start with kind of meeting the industry where it is and figuring out how we could plug in some of the advances with like privacy enhancing technologies that enables advertisers and marketers to do the things they're used to doing today, right? We want to get as close to their workflow as possible, but make sure behind the scenes we're doing the right level of abstractions and aggregations and stuff like that. A key area, so you touched on targeting, but I'll focus a bit on measurement, right? So a lot of people might think that, okay, well, the industry is creepy because they want to just suck up everybody's data and just have it to kind of, spy on Jeremy, right? But I don't really think of it kind of that way. I start off by saying like, okay, well, why is this data being captured to begin with, right? Is being captured because you need to measure it. The fact of the matter is that like you take a simple thing like a programmatic flow, right? there's all these different players kind of involved, DSPs and SSPs and verification companies and, publishers and all this stuff. You need to know that when your ad gets placed and you've paid your CPMs or your CPCs, that the action was actually delivered, right? And that's where kind of like a lot of this argument comes in, right? Like it's a very basic thing. It's not about being creepy. It's just, trust but verify. So we started thinking about a problem like that and say like, okay, how can we leverage different techniques that could possibly provide like maybe aggregate information or other ways like that we could then process the information. So that way the advertisers still get the information they need to get the verification. At the end of the day, the person who's clicking the buttons, like they want to look good in front of their boss. They want to, drive more business, right? So we want to make sure they're able to get the information they need, right? It may not, at least today, be at the level that they're used to at getting at some other platforms where, they have fewer restrictions in place. So all the data is there and they can capture it. But, we are able to come reasonably well close enough, and that will get better and better kind of over time. So, getting back to the heart of your question, I think is really about kind of meeting the industry where it is, understanding the why behind why many of these things happen, right? And the why is legit. It's really thinking about the how and doing the how in a different way that enables people to get what they're trying to do.
I really appreciate the way that you were talking through essentially checks and balances, because as advertisers are buying and selecting different technologies, agencies or brands that are then using these different technologies, you need to make sure that there's actual ROI and that there are components that are taking place, just like in any other business. It's checks and balances. Also appreciated, Orville, just talking through the Mozilla itself and Firefox, the browser, have been around for so long. You guys have weathered so many different storms where that gives you a good line of sight on the continued ascend of where the industry is going versus the descend where some others have gone into. So when we think through that, I suppose the simple question I've been ruminating on while you're talking is just, how is advertising at the core of the open web that we're in? Because talk through several decades worth of this historical context, this industry is built on the open web and it's built on advertising.
Yeah, I would say, it's actually kind of counterintuitive, right? So when we think of the open web, right, we think of like, maybe some hackers in Berkeley, right? Like putting up open source code and putting it out there and all this stuff. But like, if we really step back, right, and we think about like the great benefits that the web has provided society, right? Whether that's like free communication tools, like there's people I stay in touch with that, 50 years ago, I would have lost touch with, right? But it's only because of like social media, I'm able to access them. If there's something I need to know about, I could find the video tutorial kind of online. I have email platforms, like free browsers, all this stuff kind of available for free. But if you were actually to put a dollar figure on it, we're talking trillions of dollars worth of infrastructure kind of globally. So at the end of the day, somebody has to pay for it, right? Like all these engineers are getting paychecks and they're getting good paychecks too, right? So like something's paying for it. And at the end of the day, it's essentially this like just south of $800 billion global digital advertising industry that's essentially paying for all of it, right? So advertising to a certain degree is actually at the core of an open web, right? I don't want to say that to diminish like the free work of open source and all that, super critical, right? But as far as kind of like paying for infrastructure and people like the OpEx and CapEx that's provided all this value, right? Digital advertising overwhelmingly has been at the core. So there's benefits to it. The issue that we really have is kind of around the data flows and the fact that it's become surveillance capitalism, right? And getting like these granular profiles on individuals that then get misused. That's where the issue comes from. So if we're able to keep the good part, which is like this advertising ecosystem that's funding all of this, right? But then remove the surveillance capitalism part of it, right? Then you get to that ideal state of kind of like how this open web stays funded. So that's kind of where like, it probably shows by how I'm answering this question, where I get like a lot of my excitement and joy kind of for this type of work, because I think it's really at the core of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you're talking about essentially a tad bit shy of $1 trillion that's being transacted. How do you draw the line between privacy and personalization?
Well, we think that privacy is actually a fundamental human right. So it's kind of at the core of everything we do, right? So it actually starts from the privacy perspective, right? And then kind of extrapolates kind of out. I would say, it is an interesting situation where you think about like, we're trying to meet the industry where it is, right? Where, I like to assume positive intent, right? So I think that many of these systems, when they were designed to accomplish a goal, right? They weren't designed to think about like greater societal impact and like all these other things. I was like, I have my, I don't know, GeoCity site or something, right? I want to monetize it, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So you just want to throw some ads on it, right? And then later you figured out like, oh, I can make this even more profitable. And then all of a sudden it's like, how did we get to this spot, right? So I think there's a I can't believe I said GeoCities.
That was great. That was a good poll. Yeah. That was great.
So we think kind of at the core, right? Privacy is where everything kind of originates, right? But just because you originate with privacy doesn't mean you can't accomplish what you're trying to do. You just have to be a bit more creative. And like I said, like I benefit greatly from the fact that there's been all these advancements in privacy enhancing technologies, which enables us to kind of take a look back at kind of 20 plus years of internet and digital advertising and just reimagine how we do the key scenarios that people care about.
Really well said. I feel like I teed you up for that, but that was such an amazing answer for real. That helps just go to the next question. The final question is just, what's Mozilla's long game for rebuilding brand trust across the web? Besides for drinking out of a fire hose from...
Yeah, I say kind of at the core of it is making sure that we develop the products and services that users really care about, but also give them the confidence that we put the people before the profits, right? So we're really thinking about kind of what's truly in the best interest of the user, not as in this is in the best interest of the user so I can monetize them, but truly what's in the best interest of the user for what they're trying to do with their daily lives and giving them the tools that enables them to kind of complete those. So whether that's the browser being able to get online and do the things they need to do, maybe providing them new ideas and choices and kind of like what updated AI flows might look like, or maybe it's digital advertising, right? And making sure that people are able to discover the products that they care about, they need about for their lives, but not have to worry that in order to find that blender or that water bottle, that I now have to have a lifetime of like tracking throughout the internet.
You guys are certainly one of the shining stars and safe spaces on the net. So thank you.
Can I just say, like, Orville, super impressive. Number one, like, thank you for joining us. I have no notes.
Yeah,
no notes. We want you back for something else, and we'll reach out. But thank you so much for joining us. And again, thank you to our sponsors, Mozilla, for sponsoring this series. On episode 3, we actually have Natasha Sheikh from Wells Fargo joining us to chat about the importance of protecting trust while chasing performance. Orville, thank you again for being here with us. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you both for having me. This was great, and I look forward to a future chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Orville. Thank you, Mozilla Ads. We appreciate you. This is great.